Daniel Brooks slammed his locker shut, turned to the room full of colleagues and said the 6 words that changed everything. "I think I finally have a date." The room laughed. People clapped. Someone whistled. But Sophia Carter, the CEO of the entire hospital network, didn't laugh. She leaned forward, looked him dead in the eyes, and whispered something no one else in that room could hear. What she said in that moment set off a chain of events that neither of them saw coming. Drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. And if you're new here, hit subscribe because this one, you'll want to stay for all 5 parts. The alarm went off at 4:47 in the morning. Daniel didn't slam it, didn't groan, didn't pull the pillow over his face the way most people do when the darkness outside still feels like the middle of the night. He just opened his eyes, stared at the ceiling for exactly 3 seconds, then swung his legs over the side of the bed and stood up. That was it. No drama, no internal debate, no negotiation with himself about 5 more minutes. He'd stopped doing that a long time ago, back when he realized that 5 more minutes was a luxury that belonged to a version of his life that no longer existed. He moved quietly through the hallway, careful not to wake her. Lily's door was cracked open the way she always left it. She was afraid of full darkness. Had been since she was 4. Daniel had never made a big deal about it. He just made sure there was always a small nightlight plugged in near the baseboard, a soft yellow glow in the shape of a star, and he always left her door exactly 3 inches open before he went to bed. Every night, without fail. He paused at her doorway for a moment the way he always did. She was curled up on her side, one arm wrapped around a stuffed elephant named Gerald that had lost most of its stuffing somewhere around Lily's 5th birthday, but remained stubbornly her favorite thing in the world. Her braids, the ones Daniel had spent 22 minutes doing the night before, following a YouTube tutorial for the 4th time that week, were slightly undone at the ends. Her small chest rose and fell. He stood there for maybe 10 seconds. Then he went to make breakfast. The kitchen was tight. The whole apartment was tight. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a living room that also served as Lily's art studio most weekends. Daniel had learned to navigate it with the efficiency of a man who had long ago stopped feeling sorry about the square footage. He scrambled eggs, made toast, cut an apple into exactly 8 slices, the way Lily liked, not 6, not 10-8, because Lily had explained once with complete seriousness that 8 was the correct number and anything else tasted different. He'd never questioned it. He set her plate on the table, poured her juice, and had just turned back to the counter when he heard her bare feet on the hallway floor. "Daddy?" "Morning, Bug." Lily appeared in the kitchen doorway, still half asleep, hair escaping in every direction, despite his best efforts the night before. She was wearing the purple pajamas with the little stars on them, the ones that were already a size too small, but that she refused to let him donate. She looked at her plate. 8 slices, she said. 8 slices, he confirmed. She sat down without another word and picked up her fork. Daniel leaned against the counter with his coffee and watched her eat for a moment. Something he did every morning, though he never said anything about it. Just watched. Logged it somewhere quiet inside himself. The way her nose scrunched when she blew on a bite that wasn't even hot. The way she always ate the eggs before the toast without exception. Small things. The kind of things that don't seem important until one day you understand they're the most important things you have. "Miss Patton said we're doing a spring project," Lily said, mouth half full. "Swallow first." She swallowed pointedly. "Miss Patton said we're doing a spring project. We have to bring something from home that means something to us." "Like what?" "Like anything. Tommy Martinez is bringing his baseball. Emma Chen is bringing a picture of her dog." "What are you going to bring?" Lily considered this with the gravity of a Supreme Court justice. "I don't know yet," she finally said. "I want it to be something really good." "You've got time." "The project's in 3 weeks." "You've got time," he repeated. She looked at him with an expression that was startlingly adult for a 7-year-old. The kind of look that said she was filing his opinion away in the category of opinions that are technically true, but not entirely helpful. Daniel hid his smile behind his coffee mug. He dropped her at school at 7:15. She climbed out of the car backpack, swallowing her small frame, and then turned back and knocked on the window. He rolled it down. "You're working a double today?" she asked. "Might be a late one. Mrs. Guzman will pick you up." Lily nodded. She'd heard this before. She'd heard variations of this her entire life. "Okay," she said. Then, "Don't forget to eat something, real food, not just those granola bars." "I'll eat." "Real food, Daddy." "I'll eat real food." She gave him a look that said she didn't entirely believe him, but was choosing to let it go. Then she turned and walked toward the school entrance, her braids bouncing slightly. The uneven ones, he'd done the imperfect ones, and she didn't look back. She never looked back. He'd learned early on that this was not indifference. This was trust. He sat in the parking lot for another 30 seconds after she disappeared through the doors. Then he drove to work. Daniel had been a paramedic for 11 years. Before Lily, the job had been something he loved: the movement, the purpose, the sense of walking into someone's worst moment and being the thing that helped. He'd been good at it. Calm under pressure, in a way that surprised people who met him off the clock, because off the clock, Daniel was quiet, a little awkward, the kind of man who could disappear from a room without anyone quite noticing when he left. But on the job, there was something that switched. His partner for the past 3 years, Marcus Webb, had described it once saying, "You know how some people panic and some people freeze? Danny just clarifies. Like the worse it gets, the simpler he becomes." Daniel hadn't known how to respond to that, so he'd said, "That's a weird thing to say." And Marcus had shrugged and said, "Yeah, well, you're a weird dude." And that had been that. He pulled into the hospital lot at 7:48. The morning briefing was at 8. He had 12 minutes, which was exactly enough time to get his gear checked, grab a second coffee from the break room, and find out from Marcus whether anything significant had come through overnight. Marcus was already in the break room when Daniel walked in. "You look tired," Marcus said, not looking up from his phone. "Good morning to you too." "You eat?" "Lily asked me the same thing." "Smart kid." Marcus finally looked up. "Double today." "Covering for Reyes. His wife had the baby last night." "Third one." "Fourth." Marcus let out a low whistle. "Man, 4 kids. He seems happy about it." He also seemed happy eating a cold burrito at 2 in the morning last Tuesday, so I'm not sure his happiness is a reliable metric. He pocketed his phone. "You hear about the meeting this afternoon?" Daniel poured his coffee. "What meeting?" "Mandatory staff thing, 2 o'clock. The new CEO is doing a walkthrough of the frontline divisions. Wants to meet everyone, apparently." Daniel had heard of Sophia Carter the way most people in the hospital had heard of Sophia Carter, the way you hear about weather patterns. You don't need to have experienced the storm personally to know it's real. She'd been appointed 8 months ago at 37, making her one of the youngest hospital CEOs in the state. Before that, she'd rebuilt 2 failing medical centers in less than 4 years. She had a reputation for being precise, demanding, and, depending on who you asked, either visionary or terrifying, sometimes both. "I'll be on a call," Daniel said. "Mandatory means mandatory man. Reyes isn't here to cover if I—" "Danny." Marcus looked at him. "Go to the meeting, eat a sandwich, let yourself exist in a room for 45 minutes. Daniel said nothing. "She's not going to bite you," Marcus added. "Probably." The meeting was in the second-floor conference room. Daniel arrived 2 minutes late, slipping in through the side door and finding a spot against the back wall, because all the chairs were taken. About 40 people from various frontline departments were packed in. Department heads, shift supervisors, paramedics, nurses. The energy in the room was the particular kind of nervous that people feel when they've been told to act normal in front of someone who could theoretically upend their lives. Sophia Carter was standing at the front of the room. Daniel had seen her photo on the hospital's intranet page, but photos had evidently undersold something. She was composed in the way of someone who had learned deliberately, and through significant effort, how to command a room without performing for it. She wasn't loud, she wasn't theatrical. She was simply precise in her posture, in her eye contact, in the way she paused before speaking, as if she was deciding in real time whether a sentence was worth saying. She was speaking to the room about the new staffing initiatives, the updated resource protocols, something about a mental health pilot program for emergency responders. Daniel wasn't tracking most of it. He was tired. He was calculating whether he could get Lily's permission slip signed, returned, and still make the second half of his double without Marcus having to cover him. Then the room shifted. One of the department supervisors, a cheerful man named Rick, who had a talent for saying things at volumes slightly too loud for the space he was in, made a comment about morale. "I think what would really help morale," Rick announced, with the energy of a man who had been waiting for his moment, "is if more of us actually had something to look forward to outside of work. Isn't that right, Brooks? Didn't you say something this morning about actually having plans this weekend?" The room turned. Daniel felt the collective gaze of 40 people land on him. He stood against the back wall, coffee in hand, with the particular expression of a man who had just stepped into something he did not agree to step into. "I said I might have a date," he said in the flattest possible tone. The room responded the way rooms do when someone reveals something human in a professional setting. A ripple of laughter, a few knowing smiles, someone at the front making a sound that could only be described as approving. Daniel did not react to any of this. He kept his eyes forward. And in doing so, he found himself looking directly at Sophia Carter. She was not laughing. She was watching him. Not with the polite, detached attention of a CEO performing engagement with her employees. Something else, something he couldn't quite categorize, and which made him faintly uncomfortable in a way that had nothing to do with embarrassment. Then she tilted her head just slightly and said something. Not to the room, to him. Her voice was low enough that only the 3 or 4 people nearest to her could have possibly heard, and from the way she said it, it was clear she was not saying it for them. "Prettier than me." The meeting continued around them. Rick was already pivoting to some other comment. The laughter was fading. People were turning back to their notebooks and their phones. Daniel stood very still. He wasn't entirely sure he'd heard correctly. He looked at her again. She had already moved on back to the presentation, back to the room, her expression smooth and professional, as though nothing had happened. But at the corner of her mouth, almost imperceptible, was the faintest suggestion of a smile. Not a joke smile. Something quieter than that. Daniel looked away. He told himself he'd imagined it. He spent the rest of the meeting studying the ceiling. He didn't tell Marcus right away. They were back on the road by 3 running back-to-back calls: a chest pain in Millbrook, a fall injury on the east side, a confused elderly man who'd wandered 3 blocks from his assisted living facility and seemed delighted about it. It wasn't until they were parked outside a gas station, eating sandwiches, real food as promised, though the turkey on his was dry enough to qualify as a geological formation, that he finally said it. "She said something weird to me." Marcus looked up. "Who?" "Carter." A pause. Marcus set down his sandwich. "The CEO." "In the meeting, when Rick—" Daniel stopped. Restarted. "When Rick made that comment about my date, she said something." "What did she say?" Daniel repeated it. Marcus stared at him. "She whispered that to you?" "I think so." "Yeah. Sophia Carter, the CEO of this hospital, whispered prettier than me to you, Daniel Brooks, who is currently eating a dry turkey sandwich in a parking lot." "You don't have to say it like that." "I absolutely do." Marcus picked his sandwich back up. "What did you do?" "Nothing. I stared at the ceiling." "That tracks. It was probably a joke." "Was it?" Daniel thought about the expression on her face, the not-a-joke smile. "I don't know," he said. The correct response to that, by the way, was to say something back, something smooth, something that, I don't do smooth. I know, it's a significant problem. Marcus chewed thoughtfully. So, the date. Is it actually happening, or was that Rick being Rick? It's maybe. Her name's Carol. She works at the pharmacy 3 blocks from Lily's school. We've talked a few times. She asked if I wanted to grab dinner. Okay. I said yes. Good. Saturday. Danny. Marcus looked at him with genuine warmth. That's great. It's dinner. It's a start. Daniel looked out the windshield. The thing he didn't say, the thing he rarely said out loud because saying it out loud made it heavier, was that he didn't know how to do this anymore. The dating thing. The opening up thing. The allowing someone into the small tight apartment with the imperfect braids and the 8 apple slices thing. It had been 4 years since Claire. 4 years of building walls that were now so well constructed, he sometimes forgot they were walls at all. They just felt like the shape of things, the natural geometry of his life. She have kids? Marcus asked. No. You told her about Lily? Of course I told her about Lily. What did she say? She said she loves kids. Marcus made a non-committal sound. What does that mean? Daniel asked. It means nothing. People say that. You made a sound. I didn't make a sound. You made a sound, Marcus. Marcus finished his sandwich and balled up the wrapper. I just mean people say they love kids in the abstract. It's different when the kid is specific, when the kid is Lily, who is, and I say this with deep affection, one of the most specific children I have ever met. Daniel almost smiled. She'll be fine, he said. Not about Carol, about Lily. He wasn't sure Marcus understood the difference, but it was the thought that had surfaced, so it was the one he said. His radio crackled. They went back to work. The next 2 days passed in the rhythm that had become so familiar, it felt structural, like gravity, like weather, like something that simply was, rather than something he'd chosen. He worked. He picked up Lily. He helped with homework or tried to help, and usually managed 2/3 of the way, before Lily told him he was doing it wrong with the particular patience of a 7-year-old who has learned that correcting adults requires a delicate touch. He braided her hair. Badly. Watched more YouTube tutorials. Made the 8-slice apple. And somewhere in the margins of all of it, he thought more than once about a low voice and 4 words he was probably imagining. Prettier than me. He thought about it when he was logging incident reports at midnight. When he was sitting in the school pickup line on Thursday afternoon, because Mrs. Guzman had called in sick. When he was standing in the shower at 6 in the morning, the hot water running down the back of his neck, his mind doing the quiet inventory it always did, the bills, the schedule, the things he hadn't gotten to, the things he needed to fix. Prettier than me. And then, on Friday afternoon, something happened that made him stop thinking of it as something he'd imagined. He was at his locker after a shift changing out of his uniform, when one of the nurses, a woman named Denise, who had worked at the hospital for 20 years and knew everything about everyone, appeared in the hallway and gave him a look. What? He said. Nothing, Denise said. Just, the CEO stopped by the dispatch office today. Okay. She was asking about the weekend roster. Very specific questions. Denise tilted her head. Very specific about who was scheduled and who had time off approved. Daniel looked at her. She asked about you, Denise said simply. By name. He stood there for a moment. She's the CEO, he said. She asks about a lot of people. Denise smiled in the way of someone who has been alive long enough to recognize the difference between a man who doesn't know what's happening and a man who knows exactly what's happening and has decided for reasons of self-preservation to pretend he doesn't. Sure, she said pleasantly. Have a good weekend, Daniel. She walked away. Daniel stood at his locker for a long moment, staring at his uniform hanging on the hook. Saturday was tomorrow. He had dinner plans with Carol, and somewhere on the floor above him, in an office he had walked past but never entered, a woman he barely knew had asked about him by name. He closed his locker, told himself it meant nothing. He was very good at telling himself things. Saturday arrived the way Saturdays do when you have a 7-year-old with noise and momentum and very little regard for the fact that you'd been hoping for 15 extra minutes of sleep. Lily was up at 7:30 already at the kitchen table with her sketchbook working on something that appeared to be a horse, but had the facial expression of a philosopher experiencing a crisis of faith. "What's that?" Daniel asked, coming in with coffee. "Gerald's cousin. Gerald the elephant has a horse cousin. His name is Ferdinand," Lily said very seriously. "He lives in Montana." "Does Ferdinand know about Gerald?" "They're estranged." She didn't look up. "It's complicated." Daniel sat across from her and drank his coffee. "You have your dinner tonight," Lily said. "I do. Mrs. Guzman is coming at 6. "She is." Lily kept drawing. Then, "Are you nervous?" "No." She looked up at him over the sketchbook with an expression that was her mother's expression so precisely and painfully that Daniel sometimes had to look away when she did it, just for a second. He didn't look away this time. "A little," he said. Lily seemed to find this acceptable. She went back to Ferdinand. "You should wear the blue shirt," she said. "Not the gray one. The blue one makes you look like you have your life together." "I'm glad one of us thinks so," he said. She smiled at her sketchbook. He smiled at his coffee. And for a moment, just a moment, the apartment felt exactly the right size. He wore the blue shirt. He got to the restaurant, a quiet Italian place on Merchant Street that Carol had suggested at 7:03. Carol was already there. She was warm, attentive, prettier in person than he'd remembered from their brief conversations at the pharmacy counter. They talked easily. She asked about Lily. He answered honestly. She laughed at the right times. He laughed too genuinely, the sound of it slightly surprising him, the way it always surprised him when it turned out he was still capable of it. It was going well. It was actually legitimately going well. And then 40 minutes into dinner, the door to the restaurant opened. He didn't notice at first. Why would he? The restaurant had been filling up all evening, the comfortable hum of other people's conversations building around their table. But then, Carol's eyes moved briefly past his shoulder, the tiny involuntary flick that people make when someone walks into a room and registers in the peripheral vision as significant. Daniel turned. Sophia Carter was standing just inside the entrance, alone. No companion, no colleague, no phone pressed to her ear. She was wearing a dark coat, her hair down, which he realized he'd never seen before, having only encountered her in professional settings, where everything about her was assembled with intention. She was speaking to the host. She had not seen him, or she had not appeared to see him, and in the space of approximately 3 seconds, Daniel made several quiet calculations, none of which he was proud of, and all of which happened entirely involuntarily. The first. This is coincidence. The second. Denise told me she asked about my weekend. The third. She is being seated 2 tables away. The fourth, which arrived last and settled somewhere low in his chest with a weight he wasn't prepared for. She came here alone. Carol was saying something. He turned back to her, and he smiled, and he answered, and he was present in the way that he had always been capable of being present physically, attentively, doing the right things. But some part of him, a part he hadn't consulted and didn't have a name for, had already turned. And it was looking at the woman sitting 2 tables away alone with a glass of water and a menu she wasn't reading. What happens when their eyes finally meet across that room, and what Sophia says when she walks over, will change everything Daniel thought he understood about his own life. But first, he had to get through the rest of dinner, and that was harder than it should have been. Carol was talking about her sister's wedding, something about a venue in Savannah, a disagreement over centerpieces, a florist who had apparently committed some category of professional offense serious enough to warrant a 10-minute retelling. She was funny about it, self-deprecating. She had a good laugh, the kind that started in her eyes before it reached her mouth. Daniel was listening. He was also aware with a precision that embarrassed him that Sophia Carter had just been handed a menu by the host, and that she had taken it without looking at it, and that she had not once glanced in his direction, which either meant she genuinely hadn't noticed him, or it meant she had noticed him immediately and was choosing very deliberately not to look. He had no idea which was worse. And then my mother said, "It's just flowers, Christine," which if you knew my sister is basically the same as saying, "It's just oxygen, Christine." Carol finished and laughed. Daniel laughed too. On time, genuinely enough. "Is your family close?" she asked. "It's just Lily and me," he said. "And Marcus, my partner. He counts." "Does Marcus know he counts?" "He would be insufferable if I told him so, no." Carol smiled. "What about your parents?" "My dad passed when I was 19. My mom's in Phoenix. We talk on Sundays." He paused. "She calls at 7:15 every week. Hasn't missed one in 23 years. That's actually beautiful." She'd say she's just being practical, that if she lets it slip once it becomes optional. Carol tilted her head slightly. "She sounds like you." Daniel wasn't sure what to do with that, so he took a drink of water, and in doing so, over the rim of his glass, he looked up. Sophia Carter was looking at him. Not glancing. Not the polite, casual eye contact of two people who happened to be in the same restaurant. She was looking at him the way people look when they've been working up to it, with the particular steadiness of someone who has made a decision. Their eyes met. She didn't look away. Neither did he for about 3 seconds longer than was reasonable. Then Carol said his name, and he came back to the table. "Sorry," he said. "You okay?" "Yeah, absolutely." He set down his glass. "Tell me about the florist." Carol raised an eyebrow. "I already told you about the florist." "Tell me more about the florist." She laughed again, and the conversation moved forward, and Daniel kept his eyes carefully, deliberately on the woman sitting across from him. He made it 11 more minutes. Then he heard a chair push back. He felt rather than saw movement to his left. And then a voice, composed, unhurried, with just enough warmth to make it impossible to categorize as professional, said, "Daniel." He looked up. Sophia Carter was standing 2 feet from his table. She was looking at him with an expression he still couldn't fully read, something layered, something that had more going on beneath it than the surface suggested. She was wearing a dark burgundy blouse under the coat she'd apparently already checked, and she looked, he registered involuntarily, like someone who had not shown up here by accident. "Ms. Carter," he said. "Sophia," she corrected. Then she looked at Carol with a smile that was entirely natural and entirely unreadable. "I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm Sophia. I work with Daniel." Carol glanced between them. "Oh, hi. I'm Carol. It's lovely to meet you." She looked back at Daniel. "I just wanted to say hello. I didn't realize you'd be here." The pause that followed lasted approximately 1 beat too long. "Small world," Daniel said. "It is," Sophia agreed. Another pause. Carol looked at Daniel. Daniel looked at Sophia. Sophia held his gaze with the complete equanimity of a woman who had sat across negotiating tables from hospital board members and never blinked once. "Enjoy your dinner," she said finally. "Both of you." And she turned and walked back to her table, folding herself into her chair with the quiet ease of someone who had just done exactly what she'd intended to do, whatever that was. Carol watched her go. Then she looked at Daniel. "She's your boss?" Carol asked. "Technically, she's everyone's boss. She runs the whole network." "She's beautiful." Daniel picked up his fork. "I hadn't noticed." Carol gave him a look that suggested she found this response medically implausible. "The food here is really good," Daniel said. She let him have it. But for the rest of the evening, something had shifted. Not badly. Not dramatically. Just the way a room shifts when a window is opened. The temperature the same. The furniture unchanged, but a new current moving through everything. He paid the check. He walked Carol to her car. She hugged him at the driver's side door, and the hug was warm, and she said she'd had a really good time, and he said he had too, and both of those things were true. "We should do this again," she said. "Yeah," he said. "We should." She smiled, got in her car, drove away. Daniel stood in the parking lot. He had not looked back at the restaurant window. He was very intentional about that. He got in his car, drove home paid. Mrs. Guzman checked on Lily, who was asleep, one arm around Gerald, the star nightlight glowing soft and gold, and then sat on the edge of his bed for a while in the dark. He was not thinking about Carol's laugh, which had been genuine and easy and good. He was thinking about the way Sophia Carter had said, "I didn't realize you'd be here," with the absolute neutrality of a woman who chose every word deliberately. He was thinking about what Denise had told him. He was thinking about a question whispered in a conference room 2 days ago with a smile that wasn't a joke. He lay down, stared at the ceiling. This is nothing, he told himself. This is exactly nothing. He believed about 40% of that. Monday arrived, and with it a shift that started bad and got progressively worse in the way that shifts sometimes do, as though the universe had decided to present everything at once as an exercise in humility. 2 motor vehicle accidents before noon, a cardiac event in a grocery store parking lot, a domestic situation on the west side that required both paramedics and the waiting presence of a patient Daniel had to actively locate somewhere deep inside himself. By 2 in the afternoon, he was running on coffee and the particular determination that comes from being too busy to stop. He was filling out incident documentation at a workstation near the dispatch office when his phone buzzed. Unknown number, hospital internal extension. He answered. Daniel Brooks. "This is Jenna Park. I'm calling from the CEO's office." A pause. "Ms. Carter would like a few minutes with you this week if you're available. She asked me to reach out directly rather than go through scheduling." Daniel sat very still. "Can I ask what it's regarding?" She mentioned it was about the Frontline Resource Initiative, but she was vague. Another pause. She's usually vague when she schedules things informally. He considered that. When is she thinking? Wednesday morning, 7:30 if that works with your shift start. 7:30. Before his shift, which meant she had looked at his schedule. "Sure," he said. "Wednesday's fine." He set the phone down. Marcus appeared at his elbow from approximately nowhere. "Who was that?" "Nobody." "Your face says not nobody." Daniel looked at him. "The CEO wants to meet with me Wednesday." Marcus opened his mouth. "Don't," Daniel said. Marcus closed his mouth, then opened it again. "I'm just going to say, Marcus, that this is objectively interesting. It's about a staffing initiative." She personally called to schedule a 7:30 meeting with a paramedic about a staffing initiative. Her assistant called. Her assistant called you directly instead of going through scheduling. Marcus stared at him. "Danny, buddy, I say this as your closest friend. You are a genuinely oblivious human being. I'm going to finish this report. That is the wrong response to what's happening. What's happening is I have a meeting on Wednesday about staffing logistics." Marcus looked at him for a long moment, with the expression of a man watching someone walk slowly toward a low-hanging bar they haven't yet noticed. "Sure," Marcus said. "Staffing logistics." He walked away. Daniel finished his report. Wednesday morning, he was outside the executive suite at 7:25. He had never been on this floor before. It was different from the rest of the hospital in a way that wasn't about aesthetics, it was about sound. The floors below had a particular ambient noise that was constant and layered wheels, voices, monitors, the compressed hum of machinery doing critical things. Up here it was quiet, in a way that felt almost foreign. The assistant Jenna Young organized with the alert efficiency of someone who had learned early to be 2 steps ahead of everything looked up when he came in. "Mr. Brooks, right on time." She stood. "I'll let her know." He sat. He was there for less than 90 seconds before the inner office door opened. Sophia Carter stood in the doorway. She was wearing a slate gray jacket, her hair pulled back, and she looked as she always looked, entirely in command of the space she occupied. But there was something different about her expression this morning. Something that was not the polished composure of the meeting room or the unreadable neutrality of Saturday night. She looked, he thought, like someone who had been thinking about something for a while and had decided to stop pretending she hadn't. "Daniel," she said. "Thanks for coming up. Come in." Her office was large and orderly, and full of the kind of quiet that accumulates when someone spends a lot of hours in a space thinking hard. There were no personal photographs that he could see. A whiteboard along one wall covered in dense, strategic notation. 2 chairs across from her desk, which is where she led him, sitting across from him rather than behind the desk, a choice he registered because it was a choice. "I want to be straightforward with you," she said. "Okay. The staffing initiative is real. I do want to discuss it. But it wasn't the primary reason I asked to meet with you." He waited. "I owe you an explanation," she said. "Or at least an acknowledgement." She looked at him steadily. "The restaurant. I wasn't there by coincidence." The silence that followed was the kind that has weight. "I know," he said. Something moved across her face. "You knew." "I had a reasonable suspicion." "And you didn't say anything." What was I going to say? She was quiet for a moment. Then, "Fair point." She folded her hands on the arm of the chair. "I want to be clear about something. I'm not in the habit of showing up where my employees are on a Saturday night. I don't do that." "Then why did you—" The question was direct. He hadn't planned to ask it that directly, but it was out now. She met his eyes without flinching. "Because I've been watching you for about 4 months, she said, "and I was trying to talk myself out of it." He said nothing. "Watching you work," she added quickly, but not defensively. "The way you are with patients. The way you are with your team. The way you handled that situation in February, the one with the unresponsive child in the East Wing corridor. You didn't know I was there. You were already 12 hours into a double, and you stayed another 40 minutes to make sure the parents had what they needed before you left." She paused. "I ask about people when I see something I don't expect. It's a habit I've had since I took my first leadership role. I noticed you. I asked about you. And I found out about Lily and the double shifts and the fact that you haven't taken a personal day in 14 months. Daniel looked at the whiteboard. 14 months, she said again more quietly. I did the math. It's not a complaint, he said. I know it's not. That's the part that got to me. She uncrossed her legs and leaned forward slightly. I grew up with a father who worked like that, who carried everything alone and never made it sound like carrying. And watching you, I felt something I wasn't prepared to feel. She stopped. Then, I'm not asking for anything. I want to be clear about that. I asked you here because I thought you deserved to know why I said what I said in that meeting, why I showed up on Saturday. Because you're a perceptive man, and treating you like you weren't going to figure it out felt like a disrespect. Daniel was quiet for a long time. The building hummed around them. Somewhere below, the hospital was in full motion, wheels and voices, and the compression of urgent, continuous life. That question you asked me, he said finally. In the meeting. Yes. Was that an actual question? She looked at him. Not with the composure she wore like a second skin, with something underneath it, something careful and honest and a little exposed. I don't know what it was, she said. I said it before I decided to say it, which doesn't happen to me. He nodded slowly. I went on the date, he said. I know. I saw. Carol is a good person. She seemed warm, Sophia said. There was nothing pointed in it, just acknowledgement. I don't know what I'm doing, he said, with any of it. Dating, people, any of that. He exhaled. I've got a kid, and a lease, and a truck that needs a new alternator. I'm not exactly a compelling offer. You keep saying that like it's a reason to dismiss yourself. It's an accurate inventory. It's an incomplete one. Her voice was calm, but there was something in it that pressed forward. You're a man who braids his daughter's hair before 5 in the morning and answers her calls during the worst moments of other people's lives. Who stays after his shift ends. Who hasn't asked for a single thing from this hospital in 14 months that wasn't for someone else. She paused. That's not an incomplete life, Daniel. That's a full one. He looked at her. There was a long, quiet moment between them that felt different from the ones before it, not empty, but occupied by something neither of them had put a name to yet. I should get downstairs, he said. Of course. He stood. She stood. They were about 4 feet apart, and the space felt both entirely appropriate and somehow also the wrong distance, and he did not know what to do with that. The staffing initiative, he said. What did you actually want to know? Something shifted in her expression, a break in the seriousness brief and real. Almost a smile. Whether the double shift rotation is sustainable, she said, for people in your position, with dependents. It's not. I know. I wanted to hear you say it. He nodded. Is that going in a report somewhere? It's going into a policy revision, along with several other things I've been working on. It won't happen overnight, but it'll happen. He looked at her for a moment. Okay, he said. Okay, she agreed. He walked to the door, put his hand on the frame, then stopped. He turned back. She wasn't, he said. Sophia looked at him. Prettier than you, he said. She wasn't. He didn't wait for her response. He left. He made it back to the ground floor through the corridor and all the way to the break room before Marcus looked up from his coffee and said, How was the staffing meeting? Fine. Yeah. Marcus looked at him for a long moment. You've got a look. I don't have a look. You've got the look you get when something happened and you're processing it in that sealed vault way of yours where you won't say anything for 3 to 5 business days. Daniel poured himself a coffee. She told me she'd been watching me for 4 months, he said. Marcus set down his cup. Not in a weird way, Daniel added. She saw something. She asked about Lily. She knew about the double shifts. He paused. She was at the restaurant Saturday on purpose. The break room was quiet. Danny, Marcus said. I know. That is not a staffing meeting. I know. The CEO of this hospital. I know, Marcus. Who could have any? I know. Marcus picked up his coffee again, set it down again. What did you say to her? I told her she was prettier than my date. The silence that followed had a particular quality. You said that, Marcus said slowly. On the way out. Just dropped it and walked away. Pretty much. Marcus stared at him, and then slowly a grin spread across his face that was so wide it looked structural. Danny, he said with deep, genuine appreciation, that is the most unexpectedly smooth thing you have ever done in your entire life. I'm going to pretend you didn't say that. That is the kind of exit line that people write about. We have a call at 9, Marcus. I'm just saying. The call, Marcus. Marcus was still grinning when they walked out. The rest of the week moved the way weeks move when something has shifted internally and the external world hasn't quite caught up yet. He worked. He picked up Lily. He made the 8-slice apple. He watched another YouTube tutorial and managed on Thursday evening to produce a braid that Lily looked at for a long time before saying with careful diplomatic honesty, "It's better than last week." He took that as a significant win. On Friday, there was an email in his hospital inbox from the CEO's office. Not from Sophia directly, from Jenna, her assistant, informing him that effective next billing cycle, his shift rotation had been flagged for review as part of a new frontline sustainability initiative, and that he was provisionally approved for adjusted scheduling that would allow him to attend Lily's spring events without requiring shift trades. He read the email twice, then a third time. He sat with it for a while. There was a knock at the doorframe of the small workstation where he was sitting. He looked up. It was Denise. She was holding a coffee mug and wearing the expression of a woman who had been watching things unfold from a comfortable distance and found the view extremely satisfying. "Good week?" she asked. "Getting there," he said. She looked at the email on his screen, not reading it, just clocking it. "You know," she said conversationally, "in 20 years at this hospital, I have never once seen a policy revision initiated for one person's schedule." She sipped her coffee. "Just as a point of interest. It's a broad initiative," Daniel said. "Frontline sustainability. It covers a lot of people." She sipped again. "Of course it does." She turned to leave, then paused. She asked about Lily again yesterday, in the hallway, how the school project was going. Daniel looked up. "You told her about the project." "I mentioned it, yes. She seemed genuinely interested." Denise tilted her head. She asked what Lily was planning to bring. He processed that. "What did you tell her?" "I said I didn't know, because I don't." She looked at him levelly. "But I suspect if you asked her, she'd want to know the answer." She walked away. Daniel looked back at his screen. He thought about Sophia in her office 4 feet away telling him with perfect composure that she didn't know what the question in the conference room had been, that she'd said it before she'd decided to say it. He thought about what it cost someone like her assembled precise control to say something like that to a paramedic in the back row of a staff meeting. And he thought about Lily at the kitchen table, with her sketchbook drawing a philosophically troubled horse named Ferdinand. "I want it to be something really good," she'd said about the spring project. He looked out the window. For the first time in a long time, he had the strange and unfamiliar sense that the walls he'd built so carefully over the past 4 years, the practical load-bearing ones, the ones that felt like the shape of things, were not as permanent as he'd assumed. They were just walls, and walls, it turned out, had doors. He just hadn't been looking for one. The spring project deadline was 2 weeks away when Lily finally decided what she was going to bring. She announced it on a Tuesday morning over eggs with the gravity of someone issuing a press release. "Gerald," she said. Daniel looked up from his coffee. "Gerald the elephant." "Gerald the elephant. You're bringing a stuffed animal that's missing half its stuffing." "He's not missing half his stuffing. He's experienced." She picked up her fork. "Miss Patton said bring something that means something to you. Gerald means something to me." Daniel considered arguing. He considered pointing out that Gerald had a torn seam along his left side that Mrs. Guzman had stitched twice, and which was beginning to open again. He considered suggesting that perhaps something slightly more structurally sound might make a better impression. Instead, he said, "Okay." Lily looked at him. "Okay." Gerald is a solid choice. She seemed slightly suspicious of his agreeableness. "You're not going to say I should bring something else, my soccer trophy or the science kit or—" "You said bring something that means something. Gerald means something." He drank his coffee. "That's the assignment." Lily studied him for a moment, then apparently satisfied went back to her eggs. "Ferdinand is jealous," she said. "Ferdinand will get over it," Daniel said. "Ferdinand lives in Montana. He has space." Lily smiled at her plate. Small private, the smile she made when something landed right. Daniel logged it. He didn't see Sophia for the rest of that week. He was aware of this in the way you become aware of something only when it stops the absence of a sound you hadn't realized you were listening for. He passed the executive floor corridor twice on administrative errands, and both times the suite door was closed. He heard from Denise in passing that Sophia had flown to the city for a board meeting and wasn't expected back until Thursday. He told himself this information was neutral. His brain filed it differently. Marcus, who had the observational subtlety of a smoke alarm, said nothing, but watched Daniel with the kind of steady, sidelong attention that was somehow more annoying than direct commentary. On Thursday afternoon, Daniel was restocking the supply cabinet near the dispatch station when his phone buzzed. Not his personal phone. The hospital messaging system. He pulled it out. The sender ID read S. Carter Executive Office. His hands did something he did not authorize them to do, which was go slightly still. He opened the message. Jenna tells me the schedule adjustment went through. I wanted to make sure you saw it and that it works for your situation. S. He stood there for a moment. Then he typed back, I saw it. It works. Thank you. He put the phone down, picked up a box of saline bags, put them on the shelf. The phone buzzed again. Also, Denise mentioned Lily decided on her spring project. I hope it goes well. He looked at the message for a longer time than was probably warranted for a text about a 7-year-old's school assignment. He typed, she's bringing Gerald, her stuffed elephant. He's seen better days structurally, but she says he's experienced. He hit send before he thought too carefully about it. 30 seconds later, that's the right answer. The worn ones always mean the most. He read that 3 times. Then he put the phone in his pocket and finished restocking the cabinet, and did not take it out again for the rest of the shift. But something had changed in the specific gravity of the afternoon. He noticed it the way you notice when the pressure in a room shifts, not uncomfortable, just different. Like something that had been held at a careful distance had moved by 1 quiet degree closer. The following Tuesday, Lily came home from school and sat at the kitchen table without taking off her backpack. This was unusual. Daniel was at the counter, had his back to her, was pulling leftovers out of the fridge. He registered the silence, the specific quality of it, the absence of the ongoing narration that typically accompanied Lily's re-entry into the apartment. He turned around. She was sitting very straight, backpack still on, hands flat on the table. Her face had the expression she got when she was working through something that she wasn't sure she wanted to say out loud yet. How was school? He asked. Fine. How'd Gerald do? A pause. Miss Patton said he was meaningful. High praise from Miss Patton. Tommy Martinez said Gerald was raggedy. Daniel set down the leftover container. What did you say to Tommy Martinez? I said Gerald has lived a full life, and Tommy's baseball has never done anything except sit in a bag. That, Daniel said, is an excellent response. Lily nodded, but she didn't move. The backpack was still on. What else? He asked. She looked at the table. Emma Chen's mom brought cupcakes for the class because Emma got the science award, and Jackson Webb's dad came in to do the career talk because he's an engineer. Daniel waited, and Miss Patton asked if anyone's parent wanted to come in and talk about their job. She paused. I said you might. Okay. I said you were a paramedic and that you save people. Yeah, I do that sometimes. Miss Patton got excited. She said that would be wonderful. Lily finally looked up. But then I thought about your schedule, and I thought maybe I shouldn't have said it without asking. He looked at his daughter's 7-year-old backpack still on, already trying to manage his schedule around her own wants before she'd even let herself want the thing. He crossed the kitchen and crouched down so he was eye level with her. I'll be there, he said. You don't have to, Lily. I'll be there. She looked at him. Then she unclipped the backpack and let it slide to the floor behind her. Something released in her shoulders. Miss Patton said Friday the 14th, she said, at 1 o'clock. He ran the numbers. He was scheduled. He could trade with Reyes, who owed him 3 favors and had recently expressed a preference for the morning slots since the baby arrived. Friday the 14th, he said. I'll be there. She nodded. Then, with the decisive practicality that was so entirely her, you should wear your uniform. The kids will think it's cool. You think so? Tommy Martinez will stop thinking Gerald is raggedy when he finds out your job. Is this revenge on Tommy Martinez by proxy? Lily picked up her backpack from the floor and carried it to her room. I don't know what proxy means, she called back, but probably yes. Daniel stayed crouched on the kitchen floor for a second, looking at the doorway she'd just walked through. Then he stood up and pulled out his phone and sent a message to Reyes. He was covering the trade when he ran into Sophia in the first-floor corridor. Not in the executive suite, Not in a meeting room. Just the hallway. Both of them moving in opposite directions. Both of them carrying the particular momentum of people mid-task. She was walking with a folder, and what appeared to be a cold cup of coffee she'd forgotten to drink, and she stopped when she saw him with the naturalness of someone who had not rehearsed stopping. "Daniel." "Hey." He adjusted the supply bag on his shoulder. "You're down here early." "There's a site inspection this morning, radiology renovation." She glanced at the bag. "You're in early." "Traded a shift, covering Reyes." A brief pause, not an awkward one. Something more comfortable than that which was in its own way more complicated. "The 14th?" she said. "That's Lily's school thing." He looked at her. "Denise." "Denise," she confirmed without apology. "Is there anything Denise doesn't tell you?" "She told me the alternator on your truck still needs replacing." "That's okay. She has to stop." Sophia almost smiled. "She genuinely likes you. It comes out as intelligence gathering." "I'll take that as a compliment." They were standing about 3 feet apart in the middle of a hospital corridor, which was not a particularly dramatic setting for what was developing into the most consistently unexpected series of conversations Daniel had experienced in recent memory. "The career talk," he said. "She invited parents. Lily told her I'd come." "Are you nervous?" He considered lying. "A little. I'm fine in the field. Talking to adults fine. 20 third graders who want to know if I've seen dead people. Have you prepared an answer for that? I'm working on it. The honest answer, probably, with appropriate caveats." She tilted her head. "Kids that age can handle more honesty than we give them credit for. They just want to know it's real." He looked at her. "How do you know that?" he asked. She didn't answer immediately. Something shifted in her face, not away from him, but inward briefly before it came back. "My father used to take me to work with him when I was small," she said. "He was an HVAC technician, crawl spaces, rooftops. He'd explain everything, what broke, why it broke, how to fix it. He never talked down to me." She paused. "I understood maybe 30% of it, but I understood 100% of the fact that he thought I was worth explaining things to." Daniel was quiet for a moment. "How old were you when your mom left?" he asked. The question was direct. He'd said it before he fully considered it, the same way he suspected she had said "prettier than me" across a conference room. Something that came before the decision to say it. She didn't flinch. 8, she said. "Just about Lily's age." He absorbed that. "I'm sorry," he said. "Don't be. My father was enough." She said it with a conviction that had the specific density of something said many times privately until it became simply true. He was more than enough. Then more quietly. "He passed 3 years ago. I still pick up the phone to call him sometimes. When something good happens." The corridor moved around them, someone with a cart, a nurse heading toward the elevator, the ambient noise of a building full of urgent life. Neither of them moved. "What do you do instead?" Daniel asked. "When you pick up the phone?" She considered that. "I write it down," she said. "I started keeping a notebook. Things I would have told him." He nodded slowly. "That's a good solution," he said. "It's an imperfect one." She looked at him. "But it's something." Another pause. The comfortable kind. The kind that means neither person is searching for something to say, they just haven't said the next thing yet. "I should let you get to radiology," he said. "I should." She didn't immediately move. "How's the date, Carol?" "We've texted a few times. He stopped, started over. "She's good. It's just, I don't know." He exhaled. "I keep starting things and then running into my own walls." "What kind of walls?" "The kind you build so slowly you forget they're there." He looked at the floor for a second. 4 years is a long time to practice being alone. Sophia looked at him. Not with pity and not with the encouraging brightness of someone trying to solve him. just with recognition, the particular expression of someone who knows exactly what he means because they've been building the same walls in a different building. "For what it's worth," she said, "from where I'm standing, you're not as walled off as you think you are." He looked at her. "You just told me about Claire," she said, without me asking. He hadn't said Claire's name, but she was right. It was there underneath everything he'd said, in the architecture of it. "Yeah," he said. "I did. That's not nothing." He looked at her for a long moment. "No," he said. "It's not." She looked back at him with that same composed, honest, careful expression. The one he'd started to understand wasn't professional distance, but its opposite. A person who had learned to make composure do the work that other people did with noise. "I'll let you get to your shift," she said. "Radiology inspection," he said. "Right." She started down the corridor, then stopped half-turned. "Wear the uniform on Friday," she said. "Lily's right. The kids will love it." She walked away. He stood there for a second, then went to work. Friday the 14th arrived with the low, warm light of a mid-spring morning, and Lily dressed and ready 15 minutes before she needed to be, which had never happened in recorded history. She was wearing her favorite yellow shirt and her hair in 2 braids that Daniel had spent 31 minutes on the night before, referencing 2 different YouTube tutorials simultaneously, and which were, and he felt he could say this with some objectivity, the best ones he'd done yet. Even and secure with the little elastic bands in her colors. She'd looked in the mirror and said, "You're getting better," which from Lily constituted a standing ovation. He'd put on his uniform. The classroom smelled like construction paper and dry erase markers. 22 third graders looked at him with the particular intensity of children who are deciding in real time whether something is interesting or not. He stood at the front of the room beside Miss Patton, who was a warm woman in her 40s, with the specific gift of making everyone in her orbit feel like they were doing well. Lily was in the 3rd row. She was watching him with her hands folded on her desk, and an expression of careful, assessing attention, rooting for him, but maintaining the honest standards of an impartial observer. He took a breath. "My name is Daniel Brooks," he said. "I'm a paramedic. That means when someone calls 911 because something is very wrong, I'm one of the people who show up." A hand shot up immediately. Boy in the front row. "Have you ever seen someone die?" Miss Patton started to intervene. "It's a fair question," Daniel said. He looked at the boy. "Yes, I have." He let that sit for 1 second. "And it's hard every time. But the reason I keep doing the job is because sometimes I show up and the ending is different because I was there." The boy nodded with the gravity of a small person receiving real information. For the next 40 minutes, he answered every question they threw at him. "What's in the bag? How fast does the ambulance go? Do you get scared? What's the worst thing you ever saw? What's the best thing you ever saw?" He was honest about all of it. Appropriate, but honest. He didn't condescend. He didn't deflect. When one girl asked what the best thing he'd ever seen on the job was, he thought about it genuinely. "There was a man," he said. "Heart attack on a Tuesday morning in a grocery store parking lot. Completely alone. By the time I got to him, things were not good." He paused. "We got him back. His daughter was waiting at the hospital. She hadn't seen him in 2 years. They'd had some kind of falling out the way families do. But she was there. She came." He looked at the girl. "When I left the hospital that night, they were still in that room together figuring it out." The classroom was very quiet. "That's the best thing?" the girl asked. "That's one of the best things," Daniel said. He glanced. He hadn't planned to, it just happened at Lily. She was watching him with an expression he didn't entirely have words for. Something older than 7. Something that looked like recognition. He looked back at the class and took a question from the boy in the front row about whether the ambulance had a TV in it, which it did not, and which caused significant disappointment, and the room returned to the normal atmosphere of 3rd grade. After the class in the hallway, Lily found him outside the classroom door. She walked up to him and stood about a foot away and looked at him with careful evaluation. "Tommy Martinez said that was cool," she said. High praise from Tommy Martinez. "He said he might want to be a paramedic." A pause. "I told him it was harder than it looked." "You're protecting the brand." "I'm being accurate." She looked down the hall, then back at him. "The part about the man and his daughter, that was real?" "That was real." She nodded slowly. "Did they actually figure it out? The family thing?" "I don't know," he said. "I hope so. I didn't follow up." "You should have followed up." "You're right, I should have." She seemed satisfied by this. Then she looked at his uniform and said, "You should go. You're probably late for something." "I've got 20 minutes. Go eat something real before your shift." She gave him the practiced look of a person who had issued this instruction many times and tracked its compliance rate. "And Daddy?" "Yeah." She looked at him. Just looked at him for a second. Then, "I'm glad you came." He crouched down and hugged her briefly, because 22 third graders had just filed out into the hallway, and she had a social reputation to maintain, and she hugged back with both arms tight the way she always did when something mattered enough. Then she pulled back and walked away toward her friends, and did not look back. He stood in the hallway for a moment. He was going to be fine. He already knew that. Had known it in some basic structural sense for years, that he would do what needed doing, that Lily would be okay, that the double shifts and the 8-slice apples and the imperfect braids would add up to something solid. But fine was a floor, not a ceiling. And standing in a third-grade hallway watching his daughter's braids bounce as she walked away, he thought about Sophia Carter in a corridor saying, "You're not as walled off as you think you are." About a notebook full of things she would have told her father. About the particular loneliness of a person who carries everything competently and has forgotten somewhere along the way that carrying alone is a choice and not a permanent condition. He walked to his truck. His phone buzzed. He pulled it out. It was Sophia. One line. How did the career talk go? He stood beside his truck in the school parking lot and looked at the message for a moment. The afternoon light fell across the windshield. Somewhere behind him, the muffled sound of third-grade lunch recess, beginning a wave of noise and motion. He typed back. She said, "I'm getting better." 3 dots appeared. Then, at what? He thought about it. Everything he typed. And sent it before he could reconsider. He got in the truck, drove to the hospital, and for the first time since he'd started building them, he went to work without checking even once on the structural integrity of his walls. The texts continued. Not every day, not in the breathless, constant way of something new and nervous. More like the way a conversation continues when 2 people have established without formally establishing it that the conversation is ongoing. Sophia would send something brief, a question about the frontline policy revision she was drafting, a follow-up on a scheduling concern she'd heard about through Denise, occasionally something that had no professional pretext at all. A line from something she'd read. A question about whether Lily had decided what she thought about Ferdinand the horse yet. Daniel would answer, sometimes shortly, sometimes at the end of a long shift when his guard was low and the night was quiet at more length than he intended. He told her about the first time he'd delivered a baby in the back of an ambulance a Tuesday in November 2 years ago, the mother terrified, and the father barely conscious from panic, and Daniel talking them through it with a calm he'd had to consciously manufacture because his own hands were shaking in a way nobody saw. She told him about the first board meeting where she'd been the youngest person in the room by 15 years, and the specific way one of the senior directors had looked at her, not with hostility, but with the particular patience of a man waiting for her to reveal her limitations, and how she'd walked in with 3 months of data, set it on the table, and said nothing for 60 seconds while they read it. Did it work? He'd asked. He retired 8 months later, she'd said. We got along fine until then. Was that a coincidence? The retirement? A pause. Then, I genuinely don't know. I choose to believe yes. That's diplomatic. I'm a CEO. I've had to develop diplomatic instincts. You didn't seem particularly diplomatic in that conference room. A longer pause. No, she'd said. I wasn't. He lay in the dark after that one phone on his chest ceiling above him, doing its usual nothing, and thought about what it meant that someone like her, precise, assembled, deliberately in control of every word she said, in every professional context had, in a room full of her own employees, said something that couldn't be taken back. He thought about what it meant that she'd admitted it. He thought about a lot of things in the dark those days. Marcus noticed, obviously. Marcus had the observational subtlety of a man who had spent 11 years watching people in crisis and had gotten very good at reading what was underneath the surface behavior. He didn't say anything for 2 weeks, which was for Marcus extraordinary restraint. Then, on a Wednesday morning, parked outside a diner waiting on a pickup order they'd grabbed between calls, he said, "You've been different." Daniel looked out the windshield. Different how? Not bad different, just lighter. You're still you. But you've got less weight on you. He paused. You're sleeping. I always sleep. You sleep the way a man sleeps when he's running from something. Head down, get unconscious, get up and do it again. Marcus picked up his coffee. Lately you sleep like a person. Daniel didn't respond. You still texting her? Marcus asked. We communicate professionally about Danny. A pause. Yeah, Daniel said. We're still talking. And Carol? He exhaled. I called her last week. Told her I didn't think it was fair to keep going when there was something else in the way. Marcus was quiet for a moment. How'd she take it? Better than I deserved. She said she'd seen it at the restaurant anyway, that she appreciated me being honest. He looked at his coffee. She's a genuinely good person. Most of the people you hurt feelings-wise are genuinely good people. That's just the nature of it. Marcus wasn't being harsh, just accurate. You doing okay with that? Yeah, I am. He meant it. I couldn't keep going somewhere I wasn't actually going. Because of Sophia. It was the first time Marcus had used her name, not the CEO, not Carter. Her name with the particular weight of something made specific and real. Daniel looked at him. I don't know what it is yet, he said. That's fine. You don't have to know what it is. You just have to know what it isn't. Marcus drank his coffee. And what it isn't is nothing. The call came on a Thursday. Daniel was at the end of a regular shift. Not a double, the new scheduling had been running for 3 weeks. And the difference was something he'd felt in his body before he'd consciously registered it. He was tired, but functional. Present in a way that felt different from the survival mode present of the previous 14 months. He was in the locker room about to change when his phone rang. Mrs. Guzman. He answered immediately. Mrs. Guzman didn't call unless something was wrong. Daniel. Her voice had the specific quality that made the hair on his arm stand up. Controlled, but barely. Lily came home from school, and I thought she was just tired. She seemed a little slow, but then she said her chest hurt and she had a fever, and now Daniel, she's having trouble breathing. He was already moving. Call 911, he said. I'm coming. I already called. They're on the way. Don't hang up. Stay with her. Keep her sitting upright. Don't let her lie flat. Okay. I'm 12 minutes out. What's her color? Mrs. Guzman described it. He did the math in his head. The numbers he came up with were not the numbers he wanted. He drove the 12 minutes in 7. The ambulance was already there when he pulled up. He knew the crew Torres and Kim solid, both of them. He jogged up the stairs and through the door and into the living room where Lily was sitting on the couch with a non-rebreather mask on her face, and Torres crouched beside her, calm and focused, which was exactly right. Lily's eyes found him the second he walked in. She reached for him. He went to her, immediately crouched in front of her, took her hand. I've got you, he said. I'm right here. She was looking at him with eyes that were scared and also, and this was the part that hit him in the chest with a force he felt physically trying not to show him how scared she was, trying to hold it together for him. 7-year-old oxygen mask trouble breathing, and she was trying to protect him from her fear. "Don't do that," he said quietly. "Don't be brave for me. It's okay to be scared." Her face crumpled. He put his arms around her, carefully mindful of the mask, and held her while she cried. Torres looked at him. "Pneumonia, we think. Her O2's low, she needs to go in." "I know," Daniel said. "Let's go." The next 6 hours were the worst of the past 4 years. Not because the medical situation was unsurvivable, it was not, and the doctors at the pediatric wing were exactly as good as they needed to be. Lily was admitted, started on antibiotics and supplemental oxygen, and within 4 hours, her numbers were moving in the right direction. But Daniel sat in the chair beside her bed and did not move. He held her hand while she slept. He watched the monitors with the particular attention of a man who knew exactly what the numbers meant, which was both a professional asset and a specific kind of torture. He ran through the previous week in his head. Had she seemed off? Had he missed something? Had he been so occupied with the quiet interior renovation of his own emotional life that he'd failed to notice something in hers? The on-call pediatrician, a steady woman named Dr. Reinhold, found him in this posture at about 9 in the evening. "She's responding well," Dr. Reinhold said. "We caught it. She's going to be fine." "I know," he said. He did know. He also couldn't stop the part of his brain that was running the alternate calculations, the ones where he hadn't driven fast enough, hadn't answered the phone, hadn't been there. "You're a paramedic," Dr. Reinhold said. It wasn't a question. "Yeah." "Then you know the thing about the people who know too much about medicine is that they can't turn it off." "Yeah." "She's going to be fine," she said again more deliberately. "Go get something from the cafeteria. You've been in that chair for 6 hours. He didn't go to the cafeteria, but he did walk to the end of the corridor and stand at the window and breathe for a few minutes, which was close enough. He pulled out his phone. He had 4 messages he'd missed: Marcus Reyes, his mother in Phoenix, and one from Sophia that had come in about an hour ago. "Denise told me Lily was admitted. I'm so sorry. Please let me know if there's anything, and I mean anything, you need. I mean that." He looked at the message for a long time. Then he typed, "She's okay. They think pneumonia. Her numbers are better. I'm here." 3 dots immediately. She was awake then. At 10 at night. "I'm glad you're there. Of course you're there. Then how are you?" He looked at that question. 3 words simple, and somehow the exact right 3 words. Because nobody else had asked that tonight. Everyone had asked about Lily rightfully correctly. Nobody had asked about him. He typed, "I don't know yet. Ask me when she's home." "Okay," she wrote. "I'll ask you when she's home. Go back to her." He went back. Lily was in the hospital for 4 days. On the 2nd day, a package arrived at the nurse's station addressed to Lily Brooks' room 14. Inside were 3 new sketchbooks, the good kind spiral-bound with thick paper, a set of colored pencils in a tin case, and a card. The card had no name on it. It said, in neat handwriting, "For an artist who has important work to do. Get better fast. Gerald is worried." The nurse who brought it in raised an eyebrow at Daniel. He said nothing. But Lily, who had been pale and tired and largely horizontal, sat up when she saw the colored pencils, opened the tin, and ran her thumb across the tops of them with the reverence of a musician handling an instrument. "Who sent this?" she asked. "A friend," Daniel said. Lily looked at the card again, at the Gerald line. "The pretty lady from your work?" she asked. He looked at her. "What pretty lady from my work?" "The one Denise told me about," Lily said with the total innocence of a child who doesn't yet understand the concept of information security. "She said someone at Daddy's work thinks he's special. I asked who, and she said a pretty lady." Daniel was going to have a full conversation with Denise. "Denise talks too much," he said. I like Denise. Lily was already opening a sketchbook. Is she nice, the pretty lady? Yes. She's a good person. Lily accepted this and began drawing. Then, without looking up, does she know about Gerald? She knows about Gerald. And Ferdinand. She knows about Ferdinand. Lily nodded slowly, the way she nodded when she was factoring information into a larger assessment. Okay, she said. He sat back in the chair and watched her draw, and didn't ask what okay meant, because with Lily okay always meant more than it said, and he'd learned that the meaning revealed itself in time. On the third day, Sophia came to the hospital. Not to the ward. She didn't come to the room. She sent a message in the morning asking if she could stop by the hospital at some point that day, not to intrude. She said just to check in, and Daniel said yes before he fully deliberated about it. He met her in the corridor outside the pediatric wing, the two of them standing at the window with the ambient hospital sound around them, which had become over the past 3 days as familiar to him as the sound of his own apartment. She looked at him the way people look when they've been worried and have been trying not to show it. How is she? She asked. Better. They're talking about discharge tomorrow if her numbers hold. And you? There it was. The same question from 3 nights ago. In person this time, with her standing 4 feet away, watching him with that honest, unguarded attention she saved. He'd learned for moments when she'd decided the composure could come down. Tired, he said. Grateful. Scared in retrospect now that the immediate part is over and my brain has time to run through everything that could have. He stopped. You know how it is. The after fear is worse than the during fear sometimes. Because during you're functioning, she said, after you feel it. Yeah. She was quiet for a moment. Then, my father was hospitalized when I was 26, appendix, routine surgery. Everything fine, home in 2 days. But I remember sitting in that waiting room and doing the math on every possible thing that could go wrong, and I remember thinking, this is what it costs. Loving someone. This is the price of it. That you sit in rooms like this, and there's nothing you can do but wait. He looked at her. Did you ever decide it was worth it? Every day, she said, without hesitation. Every single day I had with him was worth every waiting room. He absorbed that. She's my whole life, he said. It came out simpler than he'd expected. Just that. No qualifier, no elaboration. I know, Sophia said. And the way she said it, not as a concession, not as a thing she was accepting about him, but as something she had understood for a long time, already undid something in his chest that had been drawn tight for 4 years. The gift she sent, he said. The sketchbooks. Sophia said nothing. She said a pretty lady from my work sent them. Denise, Sophia said. Denise, he confirmed. A small, quiet moment passed between them, the kind that has humor in it, and underneath the humor, something warmer. Did she like the pencils? Sophia asked. She ran her thumb over them like they were sacred objects. Sophia smiled. A full one this time, the kind she didn't deploy in meetings. Good, she said. He looked at her. He'd been looking at her and looking away and looking back for weeks, but right now he just looked and didn't look away and said the thing that had been accumulating since a conference room and a whispered question and a restaurant and a corridor and dozens of late-night messages that had moved imperceptibly and then all at once from professional to something else entirely. When she comes home, he said. When things settle, I'd like to take you to dinner. Sophia looked at him. Not a coincidence dinner, he said. Not a restaurant where we run into each other. An actual dinner where I ask you and you say yes, and we go. She was very still. Or no, he said. If the answer is no, I'd rather know that. It's not no, she said. Something shifted in the air between them, not dramatically, not the way it happens in movies. Just a quiet settling, like a thing that had been suspended finally finding ground. Okay, he said. Okay, she said, Neither of them moved for a moment. Then she said, "Go back to your daughter." And he said, "Yeah." And he went. Lily came home on a Friday afternoon. She walked into the apartment, looked around at it, with the particular satisfaction of a person returning to a familiar place after an absence, and said, "It's smaller than I remembered." "It's the same size it's always been," Daniel said. "I know, but the hospital makes everything else seem smaller." She went to the kitchen table and sat down. "Can I have the apple?" He cut the apple, 8 slices. She ate 2 of them, and then looked up at him. "Daddy." "Yeah." "I want to meet her." He set down the knife. "Who?" Lily gave him the look. The one that said she found his evasion both predictable and unimpressive. "The pretty lady," she said. "The one who sent Gerald the message on the card. The one you text at night when you think I'm asleep." He was quiet for a moment. "You're supposed to be asleep." I hear the phone buzzing, and then I hear you smile. You can't hear someone smile. You can when the apartment is small and quiet, and the person hasn't smiled like that in a long time. She picked up another apple slice. "I'm not upset about it. I just want to meet her, before it's a whole big thing." He looked at his daughter, at her careful, deliberate 7-year-old wisdom, at the braids he'd done that morning, the best ones yet even and clean, and the yellow shirt she'd put on, because it was her favorite, and she wanted to feel like herself again. "Her name is Sophia," he said. Lily tried it. "Sophia. She knows about Gerald, and Ferdinand." "You told me." She nodded, processing. "Does she like kids?" "I think so. Yes. Some people say they like kids and they don't really." "I know. I think she means it." Lily considered this with her full judicial attention. Then, "Okay. Tell her I want to meet her, but not right away. After a little while. When I decide." "Fair enough. I'll let you know when. I'll tell her to stand by." Lily gave him a look that was unmistakably amused. Then she finished her apple slices and asked him to find her sketchbook, the new one, because she had something she wanted to draw. He found the sketchbook, set it on the table, sat across from her with his coffee. She opened to the first page and picked up a colored pencil, deep blue, and started drawing. He watched for a moment. "What is it?" "People," she said. "Just people." He looked at the page. 2 figures taking shape in blue pencil, one tall, one small, standing side by side. "That's us," he asked. She kept drawing. Added something beside them, a 3rd figure still taking shape, outlined but not yet filled in. "Not yet," she said. "But maybe." He sat back. Outside, the afternoon light came through the window, the way it did at this hour. Soft, unhurried, filling the small apartment with the particular gold of an ordinary day that was in ways he was only beginning to understand, not ordinary at all. He picked up his phone. He typed, "She's home. She's good. She wants to meet you. She said she'll let me know when she's ready. I thought you should know." He hit send. The reply came quickly. "Tell her I'll wait as long as she needs. And Daniel, I'm really glad she's home." He looked at the message, looked at his daughter drawing at the kitchen table, the 3rd figure on the page outlined in blue waiting to be filled in. He typed back 2 words, "Me too." And for the first time in longer than he could accurately measure, the apartment didn't feel like a place he'd retreated to. It felt like a place something was beginning. Lily declared herself ready on a Saturday morning in late May, 3 weeks after she came home from the hospital. She didn't announce it dramatically. She didn't build up to it. She simply came into the kitchen at 8 o'clock, sat down at the table, looked at Daniel over her orange juice and said, "You can invite her for Sunday." Daniel set down his coffee. "This Sunday?" "Yes." "That's tomorrow." "I know when Sunday is, Daddy." He looked at her. She was wearing the star pajamas again, the ones that were too small. The ones she refused to give up, and her hair was loose, and she had a small, colored pencil smudge on her left wrist from drawing the night before, and she was watching him with the absolute authority of a person who had made a decision and considered the matter settled. "Okay," he said. "I'll ask her." "Tell her I like waffles," Lily said, "in case she's the kind of person who brings something. I'll pass that along. And tell her Gerald will be at the table." "I'll tell her Gerald will be at the table." Lily picked up her orange juice. "And Daddy." "Yeah." "Don't make it weird." He looked at his daughter for a long moment. "I'll do my best." She gave him the look that said his best in this particular area had a historically mixed track record, but that she was choosing to extend good faith. He texted Sophia from the kitchen counter while Lily drew at the table. "Lily has issued a formal invitation for Sunday morning. She wants you to know waffles are appreciated and Gerald will be present." The reply came in under a minute. "I'll bring the waffles." "What time?" He smiled at his phone. Lily, without looking up from her sketchbook, said, "You're doing the smile again." "I'm not doing anything." "Tell her 10 o'clock, Lily said. "That gives me time to make sure the apartment looks right." "The apartment is fine." "Yay." "The apartment has 3 of my drawings on the floor near the couch, and Ferdinand's latest portrait is taped to the wall at a crooked angle." "Ferdinand's portrait can stay." "At a crooked angle." "At whatever angle you put it at. It's your house, too." Lily looked up at him then. Something moved through her expression, brief, layered, the kind of thing that didn't belong on a 7-year-old's face, and also belonged there completely because Lily had always carried more than 7 years' worth of something in her eyes. 10 o'clock, she said again softly. 10 o'clock, he confirmed. He didn't sleep well that night. Not from dread. He'd spent enough time examining his own interior by now to know the difference between the feeling of something going wrong and the feeling of something going right that your nervous system hasn't fully adjusted to yet. This was the second one, the low-grade electricity of a thing that matters. He lay in the dark and thought about the past 4 months with the particular clarity that comes at 2 in the morning when everything else is quiet. The conference room and the whisper. The restaurant. The morning in her office when she'd said, "I wanted you to know why." The corridor conversations and the late-night texts and the hospital hallway when she'd said every single day was worth every waiting room. He thought about what it had cost her to say those things. Sophia Carter, who chose every word in every professional setting with surgical precision, who had built composure into the architecture of herself, the way other people build certainty, choosing to say directly and without performance that she cared about him. That she had been watching him for months, not because he was remarkable in any way the world would immediately recognize, but because he was doing quietly and without applause the thing she had watched her father do his whole life, and he thought about what it had cost him to hear it. Not the hearing, the receiving, the allowing of it. The decision made somewhere in the past weeks without a clear moment of making to stop treating his own life like a maintenance project and start treating it like something that could grow. He thought about Claire. He did this less often than he used to. Not because he'd stopped loving her or stopped grieving her, but because grief, he'd learned, doesn't evaporate, it just becomes proportional. It takes up the right amount of space instead of all of it. He thought about what she would have made of all this. He had the sense, not certainty, just the gentle sense that she would have found it funny in the best way. That she would have said something that punctured his solemnity about it. That she would have looked at him with the kind of love that doesn't demand stillness and said, "Daniel, just let something good happen." He lay there and let the night be quiet around him. Then he went to sleep. Sophia arrived at 10:02 on Sunday morning. She was carrying a paper bag from the bakery 4 blocks from the hospital, the good one, the one with the line out the door on weekends, and she was wearing jeans and a light blue sweater and her hair was down. The way he'd first seen it at the restaurant, and she looked standing at his apartment door, like someone who had decided not to be the CEO today, and was testing whether that felt okay. "Hi," she said. "Hi," he said. A beat. "You going to let me in?" she asked. "Yeah, sorry." He stepped back. She walked in. The apartment was exactly what it was. Small, warm, the drawing on the wall at a crooked angle. Gerald sitting at his place at the kitchen table, as promised, Lily's art supplies in their organized chaos along the counter. Sophia took it all in without commentary, but he saw her look at Ferdinand's portrait, and something in her face went quiet and attentive the way it did when she was processing something that meant more than it appeared to. "That's Ferdinand," Daniel said. "Ferdinand the horse," she said. "He lives in Montana. He and Gerald are estranged," she finished. "I know. Denise told me." "Denise needs a hobby." From the hallway, a voice. "She said she has plenty of hobbies." Lily appeared in the kitchen doorway. She was dressed the yellow shirt again, her hair in 2 braids that were the best ones yet, and she was looking at Sophia with the full, unfiltered, comprehensive assessment of a child who has not yet learned to pretend she isn't evaluating someone. Sophia looked back at her. Neither of them spoke for about 4 seconds. Then Lily said, "You're tall." "I am." Sophia agreed. "Daddy said you were nice." "I hope he's right. He's usually right about people. He just takes a long time to figure it out." She looked at the paper bag. "Are those the waffles?" "Waffle mix and blueberries," Sophia said. "I was going to make them if that's okay. I wasn't sure of the protocol." Lily looked at her father. She asked about protocol. "She's organized," Daniel said. "I can see that." Lily turned back to Sophia with something that had shifted in her expression, a loosening, slight but real. "Okay. You can make the waffles. The pan is in the cabinet under the stove. Daddy usually burns the second batch." "I do not." "He does," Lily confirmed. "Every time. Don't let him do the second batch." Sophia looked at Daniel with the contained amusement of a person who is working to keep a straight face. "I'll handle the second batch." "Good." Lily turned and walked to the kitchen table, pulled out the chair next to Gerald, and sat down with her sketchbook. "I'll draw while you cook. That's what I do on Sunday mornings." "What are you working on?" Sophia asked, moving toward the kitchen. "People," Lily said. "I've been drawing people lately." Daniel stepped aside to let Sophia into his kitchen, which was small enough that the logistics of 2 people occupying it required negotiation, and for a moment they were standing close, the paper bag between them, and she looked at him with an expression that was not nervous. Sophia Carter did not do nervous, but something adjacent. Something that acknowledged quietly and completely the significance of standing in his kitchen on a Sunday morning with his daughter 10 feet away. "Hi," he said again quietly. "Hi," she said back. The same word but different now. Settled. She unpacked the waffle mix, found the bowl, read the cabinet labels with the quick efficiency of a woman who learned new systems fast. Lily narrated from the table. "The pan is on the left. The spatula with the blue handle is the good one. Daddy always adds too much butter." "I add the right amount of butter," Daniel said. "There's a butter mark on the cabinet from February," Lily said. "That was a different situation." "It was butter, Daddy. It was the same situation." Sophia made the waffles, all of them, both batches, without burning a single one, which Lily noted with the satisfaction of a person whose prediction had been borne out. They sat at the kitchen table, Daniel, Sophia, Lily, and Gerald, and ate with the blueberries warm from the pan and the apartment full of the Sunday morning light that came through the window in a particular soft way that Daniel had always privately thought was the best light the apartment had. Lily asked Sophia questions with the systematic thoroughness of a congressional hearing. What did she do at work? Did she like it? Did she have any pets? Had she ever been to Montana? What was her favorite color? Did she think Gerald looked experienced or raggedy? And this last one was clearly a litmus test, the answer to which would be logged and weighted heavily. Sophia looked at Gerald seriously. "Experienced," she said. "Definitely experienced. You can see it around the eyes." Lily studied Gerald, then looked at Sophia. "He doesn't have eyes anymore. They fell off." I know, Sophia said. That's how you can tell. A pause. Lily laughed. It came out surprised, genuine, the full laugh that Daniel knew, the one that started quiet, and then overtook her. And something in Daniel's chest, which had been holding a careful and particular tension since 10 o'clock, released. He looked at Sophia. She was smiling at Lily, not a polished smile, not the composed professional expression, not even the careful quiet one she used with him. Just a full, real, unmanaged smile, the kind that happens when something catches you off guard and you don't have time to govern it. She felt him looking. She met his eyes. He didn't say anything. Neither did she. They didn't need to. After breakfast, Lily took Sophia on what she described as a tour of the apartment, which took about 4 minutes given the square footage, but which was conducted with the gravity of a docent showing a significant collection. Here was where she did her homework. Here was Ferdinand on the wall. Here was the star nightlight. She showed it in daylight unplugged, but explained that it glowed yellow, which was the correct color for a nightlight. Here was Gerald's regular spot on the bed. Sophia asked questions about all of it with the same focused attention she brought to board meetings, which Daniel suspected was not something she was performing. She was simply a person who listened fully to whatever was in front of her, whether it was a budget projection or a 7-year-old explaining the estrangement between a horse and an elephant. When the tour ended, Lily returned to the kitchen table and her sketchbook, and Daniel and Sophia stood in the small living room with the particular quiet of two people who have just watched something important happen and are still processing it. "She's extraordinary," Sophia said. "Low genuine." "I know," Daniel said. "That's not a compliment I give easily." "I know that too." She looked at him. "How did you do that? Raise someone like that? Alone. Working doubles, running on nothing." "I didn't do it alone," he said. "Mrs. Guzman, Marcus, Denise apparently." He paused. "And Lily did most of it herself. She came out like that. I just tried to keep up." "You're underselling yourself." "I'm being accurate." "You always say that when you're being modest." She tilted her head. "That's a habit, by the way. You should work on it." He looked at her. "You've identified a habit of mine." "I've identified several," she said. "I've been paying attention for months." "That's either very flattering or slightly alarming." "Both," she said. "Probably both." He took a step toward her. Not dramatically, not with announcement. Just the natural closing of a distance that had existed in various forms since a conference room, and a whispered question that wasn't a joke. She didn't step back. "I meant what I said," he told her. "About dinner. A real one." "I know you did. I'm not good at I don't move fast. I take a long time to—" "Daniel." Her voice was quiet and direct, the way it was when she cut through the procedural noise in a meeting and said the actual thing. "I've been watching you for 4 months and talking to you for 3. And I drove alone to a restaurant on a Saturday night because I couldn't talk myself out of it." She looked at him steadily. "I'm not asking you to move fast. I'm not asking for anything you don't have to give. I'm just telling you, I'm not going anywhere." He looked at her for a long moment. "Okay," he said. "Okay," she said. From the kitchen, without looking up from her sketchbook, Lily said, "You guys can stop being awkward now. It's fine." They both looked toward the kitchen. Lily was drawing, completely absorbed, as though she hadn't said anything. Daniel looked back at Sophia. Sophia was pressing her lips together in the way of someone managing a smile that was going to win regardless. "She's 7, he said. "She's 40, Sophia said. He laughed. Real and unguarded, the way Marcus had described, the kind that surprised him when it came. Sophia laughed too quietly, and for a moment they were just two people standing in a small apartment on a Sunday morning, laughing at a 7-year-old who was correct, and that was enough. It was more than enough. The hospital's annual charity gala was 6 weeks later, at the end of June. Daniel had received the invitation the way he received most formal hospital events, as a piece of paper to be filed under obligations and attended with the minimum necessary footprint. He owned one suit. He knew which tie went with it because Lily had selected it 2 years ago, and he hadn't reconsidered since. He was adjusting the tie in the hallway mirror when Lily appeared beside him, Gerald under her arm, and looked at his reflection. "You look like you have your life together," she said. "You said that about the blue shirt." "The blue shirt was good too. This is the full version." She tilted her head. "Is she going to be there?" "She's running the event, so yes." "Are you nervous?" "A little." "Don't be," Lily said. "You already know her. It's different when it's public." Lily considered this. "Is it?" He looked at his reflection. Thought about the conference room, the restaurant, the corridor, the kitchen table, the full accumulation of it. "No," he said. "I guess it isn't." Mrs. Guzman arrived, and Lily, who had negotiated permission to stay up an extra hour on the grounds that it was a special occasion, and Ferdinand had recently had an important development in his storyline that required documentation, extracted a promise from both adults that she would be told everything tomorrow. Daniel drove to the venue. The gala was held in the Hospital Foundation's events hall, large, warm-lit, full of the particular dressed-up energy of people who spend their working lives in scrubs or uniforms, now wearing the good versions of themselves. Daniel found Marcus near the bar, already holding what appeared to be his second drink, and wearing a suit jacket over his work shirt with the casual excellence of a man who did not stress about events like this. "You look nervous," Marcus said. "I look fine." "You look like a man who is trying to look fine." "That's the same thing." "It genuinely isn't." Marcus handed him a water. "Drink this. She's going to give a speech. You should be hydrated." "Why does me being hydrated?" "Trust me," Marcus said. "Drink the water." The evening moved through its programmatic stages: dinner remarks from the board chair, a video presentation about the hospital's year in service. Daniel sat at a table with Marcus and Reyes and a few others from the frontline division, and he ate, and he talked, and he watched Sophia across the room, doing what she did, moving through the space, with the particular ease of someone who was entirely in command of it, stopping at every table, attentive to each conversation, never performing and never absent. She caught his eye once across the room. She held it for exactly the right amount of time, and her expression said simply, "I see you there," and then she moved on. Marcus beside him said nothing, but took a quiet drink of his water. Then the program resumed, and the foundation director introduced Sophia for the evening's closing remarks. She moved to the podium. She spoke about the year, the numbers, the outcomes, the policy changes, the mental health initiative for emergency responders, the shift rotation reforms, the things that had been broken for a long time and were now incrementally being fixed. She was precise and warm and commanding in the way she always was, and the room listened the way rooms listen when the person speaking has earned it. And then she paused. She looked down at the podium for a moment, and something changed in her posture, not a collapse of authority, but a shift. The way a person shifts when they decide to stop giving a speech and start saying something real. "I want to talk about something that doesn't usually get talked about at events like this," she said. "We talk about metrics, outcomes, institutional success." She paused. "We don't talk as much about the individual people who hold this place up every day. Not the institution, the people." She looked out at the room. "Since I took this position, I've been trying to understand what makes a place like this actually work. Not on paper, in practice. And what I've found is that it's held together by people who carry more than their job description requires and never mention it, who show up when they don't have to, who stay after the shift ends because someone needs them." She stopped. "I want to recognize one of those people tonight." Daniel went very still. "Some of you know Daniel Brooks," she said. "He's been a paramedic with this hospital for 11 years. He works doubles most weeks. He hasn't taken a personal day in—" She caught herself, the ghost of a smile. Well, fewer months than it used to be. He is by every measure I have the kind of person an institution hopes for and rarely deserves. The room was quiet. But that's not actually why I'm talking about him tonight, Sophia said. Marcus beside Daniel said quietly, "Here it comes. I'm talking about him because about 4 months ago in a staff meeting, I said something to him that I hadn't planned to say. Something that surprised both of us." She paused. And what followed from that, the conversations, the honesty, the particular kind of seeing that happens when two people decide not to look away from each other, reminded me of something I'd forgotten. She looked at the room, and then she looked at him directly across the space between them, in front of 200 people. That the bravest thing a person can do isn't the dramatic thing. It isn't running into the emergency or making the hard call in the boardroom. The bravest thing is deciding after a long time of carrying everything alone to let someone stand next to you. The room was very quiet. Then someone started clapping. Then everyone did. Daniel sat at his table and looked at his water glass and felt something move through him that he didn't have a clean word for. Not embarrassment, not pride, something larger and quieter than both. The particular feeling of being fully seen in front of witnesses and finding when it happened that you didn't want to disappear. Marcus put a hand on his shoulder briefly. Said nothing. Sophia stepped back from the podium. Her eyes found his again. "Daniel," she said into the microphone, and the room quieted again, and she said it with the smile he knew, now the real one, the unmanaged one. "Would you come up here for a minute?" He stood. He was aware of the room around him, 200 people, colleagues and donors and board members, and people who had worked beside him for years, all of them watching. He was aware of Marcus behind him, radiating the contained satisfaction of a man whose faith has been vindicated. He was aware of his tie, which Lily had selected, and his suit, which was the only one he owned. He walked to the podium. He stood beside her. She looked at him with that expression, the layered one he'd been learning to read since a conference room in January, the one that was never just one thing. "So," she said, quietly enough that only he could fully hear it. "After all of this." He looked back at her. "After all of this," he confirmed. She tilted her head the same small angle as the day she'd said the question the first time. "Is she?" He understood her immediately. He'd understood the question since the night in the restaurant, since the morning in her office, since a dozen conversations in corridors and late-night messages, and a kitchen table with waffles and Gerald and a 7-year-old who laughed at the right moment. "No," he said. "She's not." And Sophia Carter assembled, composed, precise, the youngest CEO in the state, the woman who had walked into board meetings and said nothing for 60 seconds. While men twice her age read the truth she'd put in front of them, smiled. Not the professional one. Not the quiet, careful, "this is as much as I show you" one. The full version. The room was applauding again, and Daniel was aware of that, distantly, but mostly he was aware of her and the particular specific warmth of standing beside someone who had seen the whole of you. The doubles shifts, the imperfect braids, the walls you'd built, and the reasons you'd built them, and moved toward you anyway. He took her hand. She let him. Later that night, he came home to find Lily asleep on the couch, Gerald under one arm, and the new sketchbook open on her chest. Mrs. Guzman was in the kitchen, and she gave him a look that required no translation, and said she'd see herself out, and she left. He sat on the edge of the couch beside Lily. Looked at the sketchbook. On the open page was a drawing, the same 3 figures he'd seen weeks ago, outlined in blue pencil. But they weren't outlines anymore. They were filled in now, in the warm, careful colors of the good pencil set. 2 tall figures and 1 small one standing together in a row, with something that might have been a star above them, or might have been the nightlight, or might have been both. Underneath, in Lily's careful 7-year-old handwriting, she had written one word: us. He sat there for a while in the quiet apartment. He thought about the word, the weight of it, and also the simplicity. The way it named something that had been taking shape for months through whispers in restaurants and hospital corridors and kitchen tables, and a paper bag full of waffle mix, and a night in a hospital chair, and a podium, and a hand taken in front of 200 people. He thought about walls, and how you don't knock them down all at once. You just open a door, and then another, and then one day you look up and realize the rooms are connected, and the light comes through from all of them at once. He covered Lily with the blanket from the back of the couch, careful not to disturb Gerald, and turned off the overhead light and left the star nightlight glowing soft and gold the way she needed it. He went to his room, sent one message. She drew us, all three. She wrote us underneath it. The reply came quickly, the way it always did now. Save that page. Already planning to, he wrote back. He set the phone down. He lay in the dark that was no longer the same dark it used to be, not the dark of a man running from something, not the compressed survival mode, dark of someone who had forgotten what rest actually felt like. This was the other kind, the kind with a door in it and light on the other side, and something on the other side of the light that had a name he was still learning to say out loud. He closed his eyes, and for the first time in 4 years, Daniel Brooks fell asleep without counting the weight of what he was carrying, because for the first time in 4 years, he wasn't carrying it alone. Some love stories begin with grand gestures with declarations and drama, and moments designed to be remembered. But some begin with a whisper in a conference room, with a question that wasn't a joke, with a quiet man in the back row who had spent so long carrying everything alone that he'd forgotten carrying alone was a choice. And sometimes the bravest thing in the world is simply this: letting someone stand next to you. And staying.